I opened my father's bedroom door and stopped breathing. My housekeeper was locked in a sweating embrace with him, both of them shaking, her face pressed to the edge of the mattress like she was hiding. For one long second, I heard the scrape of furniture and the rush in my ears, and I thought the ugliest thing a son could think. If it were you, what would you have done? Let me back up so you know who's talking to you, and why my first impulse was pride before sense. I'm Lorenzo, 43, born and raised in Florence, a kid who grew up on job sites and conference tables because my father, Carlo, built towers and highways and a reputation you could lean a ladder on. He was the commander in every room, the man people watched the way sailors watch the sky. Then the stroke came a year ago, and the man who used to sign contracts until midnight was relearning how to stand for 10 seconds without falling. If you've lived through that with someone you love, you know how it changes the air in a house. You know what I mean. We live on a cliff above the sea where the evenings pour gold into the hallways, and if you stand in the corridor around 5, you'll swear the Tuscan light is showing off. That Thursday, I came home early. No meetings left to win, just a son wanting to see what progress looked like today. Quiet house, the soft hum of the AC marble under my shoes, paintings of men who never asked for help staring down at me like a jury. Then I heard it. A muffled voice, the heavy slide of a chair, a breath that sounded like a laugh and a sob tangled together. I followed it to my father's door, pressed the latch, and the scene hit me like a punch. Sophia, our housekeeper, 29 from Bari, tougher than she looks, was braced like a human column, her feet wide, her arms under my father's shoulders, her uniform glued to her back with sweat. My father was half standing, half hanging his knees, wobbling like reeds in wind, his cheek near hers, because that was where balance lived for that second. Her voice came out tight and steady. "One more second standing, signore, one more." To a proud son who still remembered his father's handshake, cracking knuckles, it looked wrong. It felt worse. And it said something about me I'm not proud to admit, that I believed the picture before I asked a single question. "Father," I said, too quiet to be calm. "What am I looking at?" Sophia froze like a person who knows anything she says will sound like an excuse. My father turned his head, breath broken, but the old steel was still in his words. "Don't look at her that way, Lorenzo," he said, each word placed like a brick. "She's helping me. She's helping us. Helping." And all my pride heard were the parts that stung. By putting herself in that position, by letting him lean on her like that, by making me walk in on this. "Do you realize how this looks?" I said, and the disappointment in my voice cut deeper than anger, because judgment loves to wear a polite suit. "There is no one else," Sophia said, her Italian vowels soft but firm. "The therapist canceled this morning again. The estate manager keeps saying, twice a week is too costly, and Signor Carlo wanted to stand. If I let go, he falls." She pointed not at me, but to the nightstand where a folded document waited. Transfer protocol instructions underlined the steps for a 2-person assist that she had been doing alone. My father's hand, still a little king, even now, found her wrist. "She didn't fail me," he said. "She saved me from the floor. Without her, you would have found me broken." Wait, that was the first crack in the story I'd written in my head, the first time the mask of certainty slipped. I looked at Sophia's forearms, the fine tremor that comes after a lift, the teeth marks in her lip, where she'd been keeping pain quiet. I looked at my father, sweat tracking down the lines beside his eyes. Dignity hanging by a thread he refused to talk about. Pride is a strange animal. It will drive you straight off a cliff as long as your foot stays on the gas. I swallowed, and it felt like swallowing a stone. "Then I owe you both an apology," I said. "But apologies don't fix systems, they just admit you hit one." Sessions resume tomorrow. Twice as many if needed. The manager who canceled them is finished. My father gave a broken chuckle that somehow sounded like a blessing. Seems the boy still listens when it counts, he said. I gripped the wheelchair handles, and for the first time in months, he allowed himself to lean back and rest. Not slump, not surrender, rest. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. After they slept, I walked down to my office, opened the safe, and pulled a file that should have been boring. Vendor invoices, therapy, schedules, approvals. I poured an espresso, then another. The sea outside a dark sheet of glass. Halfway through the stack, I found math that only makes sense if someone is quietly picking pockets. Therapy sessions billed that never happened, cancellations marked, client request hours reduced due to budget signatures that looked suspiciously like my estate manager's handwriting, guiding my father's. Not a fortune, not the headline kind of theft. Just a steady skim that adds up in the place it hurts most. A caregiver's back, a patient's fall, a second that doesn't get counted. I called the manager at midnight. Help me understand why we've been paying for therapy my father hasn't received, I said, and there was a long silence while he chose which lie to braid first. He tried the old trick, a we a them a nobody that was really him. Then he said the word I hate most when it comes to people who need help, optics. He gets agitated with new faces. He said it's better if the housekeeper handles the transfer on off days. For optics. Optics. Meaning a spreadsheet schedule mattered more than whether a human being fell. Meaning Sophia became a plug in a leak so he didn't have to call a plumber. Pack your things, I said. You're done. Yeah, that happened. You think that's the twist? And it is something. But the real twist was still waiting in the morning. I found Sophia in the kitchen, where the light does a little theater through a bowl of oranges, and she looked me in the eye the way only someone who decided not to be small anymore can look you in the eye. There's something you should know, she said. Your father asked me not to tell you we were practicing standing. He didn't want you to see him like this until he could stand for 5 seconds and look you in the face. He wanted to give you a moment you would be proud of. There it was. The whole story turned inside out. My father, the man who wore pride like armor, was hiding practice not because he feared my anger, but because he wanted to surprise me with strength. He wanted to be a father again, not just a patient. He wanted to win even if it hurt, even if it was messy, even if it was dangerous without proper support. And Sophia had carried the same secret a daughter carries for a father who can't carry himself. Why did you agree to that, I asked, not accusing, just trying to understand the shape love takes when it looks like disobedience. She told me about her father in Bari, a fisherman who lost his leg in a storm, how she was the one who lifted him from chair to bed and back again, how shame can curdle into anger. If you're not careful, how small wins. 3 seconds today, 4 tomorrow, can drain the anger out of a room like opening a window. I told him we needed help, she said, and still he asked, please 1 more second today. I thought if I said yes, I was keeping his dignity alive 1 second longer. If it were you, would you have kept that secret for him? Or drawn a line and told me anyway? Do you think that's fair? That confession hit me harder than the invoices. The night before, I had been ready to fire my way back to control to make a moral mess look tidy, and now the truth was rubbing a bruise on her forearm and asking for equipment and backup, not applause. The problem wasn't just a crooked manager. It was the culture I let grow around me, where people don't bring me problems because I move too fast, speak too sharply, and toss solutions like grenades. That realization stings, but it's medicine, so I slowed down. I asked what she needed instead of telling her what would look good in a memo. We hired 2 additional aides with real transfer training, 1 for mornings, 1 for evenings. We reinstated the therapist and added a second who specialized in post-stroke gait. We bought a proper standing frame, a gait belt and rails for the hallway that matched the house so it didn't feel like a hospital. We scheduled sessions, yes, but we also scheduled recovery because exertion without rest is punishment dressed as progress. And I apologized again. Not the sleek kind for boardrooms, the kind where you say what you did, who it hurt, and what you will do differently. I apologized to Sophia first, like my father told me to. She nodded like someone who's heard apologies before and knows the proof lives in the lift, not the words. 2 weeks in, we had our first small miracle. My father stood for 3 seconds with the frame and the belt, a therapist on one side, me on the other, Sophia counting like a metronome. 3 seconds isn't impressive on a sheet of paper. In the room, it was a cathedral. He laughed. Not the broken chuckle, a laugh with teeth in it. We clapped, I cried, and I didn't care if that ruined whatever mystique men like me are supposed to project. If it were you, I asked the camera later, when I told this story to my team, would 3 seconds matter or would you wait for perfect and miss the holy? Now about the manager. Because I know some of you want the justice beat. When we opened up the books, we found a pattern, not a mistake. He'd been shaving hours from elder care agreements across 3 properties, sending the savings to a shell vendor he controlled. Not huge amounts at a time, but enough that it adds up in the knees of the people doing the lifting. We filed reports, brought in auditors, turned on lights in every dusty corner of our operations. We recovered money. We can't recover the seconds families lost, because someone decided care is a line item you can trim without bleeding anyone. That's the part I keep in my pocket, as a reminder. Here's where I want your honest take, because this is the uncomfortable truth about me and men like me. I didn't notice until I walked into a scene that embarrassed me. I only turned over stones after my pride got hit. Does fixing what you can reach count if you should have prevented it by paying attention sooner? Or is that just a better picture of the same problem? Do you think that's fair? A month later, on a morning when the sea looked like it had been polished just for us, we got the moment my father wanted to give me. He stood for 5 seconds, then 6, then 5 again, because apparently we're a family that loves extra credit. His hand was on my forearm, mine on his back. The therapist steady Sophia counting, like she was timing something sacred. He looked at me straight on, eyes level, sweat running into his eyebrows, and he grinned. "Proud of you, Babo," I said, and it came out like a prayer. About time, he said, sat down carefully, closed his eyes, and let silence be the applause. After that, things got deliciously ordinary, the kind of ordinary you earn. 10 steps with the frame, a hallway rail that felt too cold. So we wrapped it in leather, a fall we almost had but didn't, because 2 sets of hands were there instead of 1. Coffee that tasted like victory because it came after work, laughter about nothing, sun on the tiles, a house that felt less like a clinic and more like a home where recovery happens. And money. I put it where my mouth finally was. We raised pay for every caregiver on our payroll, added real emergency coverage, set up, paid training for anyone on staff who wanted it. I started a fund in my mother's name to provide standing frames and transfer belts to families who can't afford them. Because the truth is, most care in this world happens in small apartments, not villas, and someone is sweating under a weight they can't safely hold, praying the person they love doesn't fall. The first delivery went to a woman who cried in her voice messages and called me signore like I was doing her a favor, when it should be the other way around. It felt small against the size of the problem. But small done now beats perfect done never. Half of you will clap for that. The other half will ask what took me so long. You're both right. There were days I wanted to control the narrative, make a shiny video where I look wise and decisive, and then I'd walk by my father's door and hear Sophia say, "1 more second, signore," And I'd remember this story isn't about my image, it's about a man trying not to be a burden, and a woman who refused to let him be one alone. It's about the people you don't see, the ones who keep the world from falling. It's about dignity, the quiet kind you only notice when it's missing. So I'm going to end where it's a little messy on purpose because life usually is. We caught the manager, yes. We fixed the schedule, yes. But every day I still have to choose to ask another question instead of trusting optics that tell me everything's fine. Every day I decide whether I care more about comfort or truth. And some days, if I'm honest, truth is heavier than I want it to be. If it were you, what would you have done when you opened that door? Shouted, fired, walked away, or paused to understand? Was Sophia right to keep my father's secret about the standing practice to protect his dignity? Or should she have told me even if it hurt his pride and bigger than us? Should elder care ever be the line item you shave when budgets get tight? Or is that the moment a society declares what it believes about human worth? Here's what I learned the hard way. Optics are cheap, dignity isn't. I learned it sweating in a room that smelled like antiseptic and courage counting seconds with a man who taught me how to stand long before he forgot how. The moment I almost failed, them both became the moment I finally saw them. And here's the grace I don't deserve but got anyway. They let me make it right. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment and tell me where you stand. Push back if you think I'm letting myself off easy, or share your story if you've ever held someone up for one more second when you were the only thing between them and the floor. If this hit you somewhere true, hit like, hit subscribe, send it to the person who needs to hear it. Stick around. Next time I'll tell you how my father taught me to let go of control so he could learn to walk again, and what happened will make you question who was really carrying who. Until then, take care of your people. Ask one more question that feels comfortable, and don't let pride talk louder than love. You know what I mean.